So, today's a very, very significant day, and I hope that you're doing good. I hope you're feeling good, because this shift, we're moving now, finally, we're moving out of the survive and thrive theme. You know, we're moving now into a new theme, which I'm going to have to think of a word for, or words. But yes, we're moving into new moments now in terms of the year, because the nodes are shifting literally in about 3-4 hours. Now, I'm speaking to you on the new moon in Cancer as well, so that's happening right now. And this is it, this is it now. This really, really is a time of great change, and it's fascinating because obviously a lot of my concerns, and we're still not quite over yet. We've got to get to the 23rd, we've got to get to the Venus retrograde. So in a week's time, I'll be commenting, and so far, so good. So far, there hasn't been any really monumental news stories which are not good. There's been actually, it's seemingly this divine intervention. And I will refer to what I'm talking about shortly. But it does seem, that the light is winning, the good is winning. And this is a very good sign, because stakes are high at the moment. There is an old world that is ending, and there is a new world that is beginning. It's been happening for a while. This is what the fourth turning is all about. But that's it now. We're really at the crucible week, or the crucible moment, where the nodes are shifting today. So from water, from Scorpio, into air, Libra, from fixed signs, so Taurus as well, Taurus, Scorpio, into cardinal, which is fire, Aries. So Aries, Libra, we're moving into a much more dynamic and kind of intense time, really. I'm pleased that Jupiter is out of Aries, during this, but still, Jupiter is in Taurus, Uranus is in Taurus. So, the war machine continues on. However, Zelensky, with the NATO summit that happened last week, you could see that Biden doesn't want to escalate things just yet, or, even though, this is like a strange time to be living. But I don't know, it's like, everyone's saying that, Zelensky's going to get into NATO. But he was really upset about it. And that kind of like, I don't know, that kind of like, I could say speaking out of turn, knowing your place kind of thing, maybe revealed a certain degree of, that's not a good thing. Because nobody really wants World War III unless you're a psychopath. And there are psychopaths out there. There are people who do want people to die. This is a reality. There are, sadly, people who have a Malthusian perspective that considers there's too many people on the planet, and would they be up in arms if a load of people died? Those people with that perspective, I'm sure very few people have that perspective. But still, there are people who think there's not enough resources, there's too many people on the planet. And what do you do at times like this? According to Thomas Malthus back in the 1800s, or whenever it was, 1700s, or even 1600s, he thought things like the plague was a good solution, or a necessary solution to curb the population. And obviously people coming out of the bubonic plague back then, the Dark Ages, whatever, considered that was a necessary adjustment. Even saw that some people in COVID, you saw that people were like, oh, well, the strongest will survive, and this is all a natural phenomenon and all that kind of stuff. There were people who genuinely believed that might be, the necessary correction. So there are a lot of psychopaths out there, and sadly, no, actually, there are not a lot. There's a very few, actually. There's very few people out there like that. And there are weird stuff going on. Another sort of like sign of divine intervention that I thought was fascinating was at the banking. This was a summit recently where you had the guy from the Bank of England, you had Powell from the Fed, you had Christine Lagarde from Europe, and the guy from Japan, I can't remember his name, and they got whooped by this girl who was very smart, very savvy, knew economics, and truly that doesn't usually happen. Usually what happens is that people don't get that opportunity, to ask those sorts of questions, because obviously they get fired. You cannot say those things to these such powerful people. And how on earth she was there, and how on earth she managed to get away with it, was so refreshing and so amazing, because, you know, they didn't have anywhere to go. Like, this is the problem, you see. This is why people don't want to buy into politics or TV or the media anymore, because it is so propagandized, it is so skewed, it is so serving, you know, a certain few, you know, and it's obvious, you know, like, and sadly, people want to bury their heads in the sand, and, you know, they don't want to do the work to understand maybe what is going on. And that really isn't, there's not much space in my community for that now, especially as we're moving into more accelerated times, you know. This shift into the nodes, you know, the North Node in Aries, you know, this is it now. I mean, we had Jupiter in Aries, and that's happened, but this is it. This is the precursor, you know, for Neptune conjunct Saturn in February of 2026. You know, we are moving now towards that. You know, the fact that Pluto went back into Capricorn, we've got this moment, this next 6 months, to really get ready, you know, for this new world of Pluto and Aquarius. You know, ultimately, this is AI. You know, this is adapting. You know, the survive and thrive theme, you know, which is just 5 hours left of this. It's telling us that. It's telling us, if you don't adapt to the technology, you're out. You know, you have to adapt. You have to learn. And all this fear, again, this is to do with fear and love as well. This is also to do with good and evil. This is such a remarkable time. And I hope you're feeling positive and excited, because I am. You know, I'm feeling really excited now. You know, we've survived this far. You know, we've come this far on the journey, you know, through patience, integrity, discernment, hope, optimism, belief, trust, you know, kindness as well, you know, and generosity. You know, all these wonderful traits which, you know, when you've got no money, or you're running out of money, or, you know, you're having stress, partnership stuff, you know, all sorts of stuff which has been so toxic because of COVID, you know. And then you see, you know, the elites, the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. And then going back to this talk with this girl, you know, was really, it was amazing. You know, you should watch it, how she was, what's the word, grilling the so-called most powerful people, these banking institutions, and how they didn't have answers for it, and leading down a pathway of CBDCs, and, you know, not making the necessary decisions to curb inflation. Obviously, inflation is what kills the middle class. It's what destroys people's savings. You know, that is a very horrible thing when it comes to economics. And, you know, how they were answering the questions, or how they were not answering the questions, and how they were lending themselves to deceit was fantastic to me. You know, it really was a sign of divine intervention. And likewise, you know, seeing XRP, you know, which is a cryptocurrency, and again, most coins, let's say, in that world, even though a lot of people don't like XRP, you know, let's say Bitcoin maximalists, for example, because they see it as, you know, the prelude to CBDCs, which, you know, could be incredibly controlling. You know, it's like the idea of, let's say, the CCP, the communist China sort of vibe, where, you know, social currency and stuff like that. So a lot of people aren't into, you know, XRP. But the point I'm trying to make here is that what happened was that Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of XRP, won a court case against the SEC, which is unheard of. And most companies, even Tesla, you know, was under the scrutiny of the SEC, will just fall because they can't afford to challenge these institutions. But because Brad Garlinghouse, XRP, has got so much money, we're talking millions, I don't think it's billions, but certainly millions, to challenge this scrutiny, which, again, when you're looking at this deception, you're looking at this corruption, especially when you look at FTX last year, if you follow this stuff, and how that was revealed in the eclipse, you know, how that was brought to light, you know, how basically, again, these banking institutions, or the powers that be, the elite, trying to control everything, you know, and there's no more time left for skirting around anymore. You know, it's like, obviously we've got to be discerning, we've got to be considerate, I've got to be kind of politically correct to a certain extent, you know, at least rational, you know, not going to conspiracy, or go into, you know, go into things that are going to be not credible. But again, when you're looking at things like peer review, and you start to understand academia and how things are skewed and distorted, then it's no wonder that so-called the most cleverest people in the world, or people we trust, might have a sort of skewed perspective. And again, saying this sort of stuff can lend to like crazy conversations or whatever. But if we're not questioning things, and that's why the idea of fascism, or when people become so blinkered to one point of view without questioning things, this idea of extremism as well, all of this lends to ignorance, which isn't sovereign. And that's what we're trying to create here. We're trying to create sovereign individuals, thinking individuals, considerate, kind individuals. And, if somebody's asking questions and that gets censored, going back to this Beyond Mars and Venus, which, my wife Eugenia has been really, really encouraging me to listen to. And it took a minute for me to get into it. He was censored. He wrote the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And certain feminist perspectives saw him as, I don't know. I'm just going to close the door one sec. Excuse me. Saw him as, what's the word? I don't know, maybe too male or not, I don't know, considerate, I don't know. I'm not sure why he would get censored, but still, his perspective was seen as maybe a bit outlandish or not in alignment for whatever reason. But yeah, this Beyond Mars and Venus, it's Eugenia, it's my wife, it's a woman, who's been encouraging me to listen to it. And I've got to say, now that I've had the space, because again, this is another problem in relationships, if you don't give each other space, you're too full, you can't listen. And, again, COVID created so much toxicity with that, where it forced people into an environment where they couldn't escape. So therefore, coping and the restrictions that came, really created a lot of problems, potential resentment. And then that's why this Venus retrograde is really going to clear a lot of these things out. I mean, we're so close to it now. So obviously, dealing with the post-COVID world and, you see it with people who just will not leave the home anymore. Obviously, it really lended to the idea of introversion, people who became more introvert, scared of the world, to a certain extent. And, if we're not, and we're all different, we all have different wants and needs, but still, if we're not going out there and seeing people, and for me in particular as a man, and I'm quite happy to call myself a man, again, I understand that there's certain gender stuff occurring right now, and this what's he called now, I can't remember his name, but this author of this Beyond Mars and Venus, he's really calling it out, and in the astrology it says it, we're moving into this Aquarius age, which is quite androgynous. However, the problem is it's the confusion, it's the people who are on the middle who are getting sidelined, and the people who are on the periphery. Like usually, if you ever read the book called The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, he talks about when there's a tipping point, there's just a very small percentage, and even in the spiritual community, it's 5%, that's all that's required, of conscious souls on the planet. It makes all the difference, it makes the tipping point. And so it's always those people on the periphery. It's the same thing, when we do healing, when you think about skin. I mean, I don't want to get too into all of this. There's so much to talk about. And my mentorship will go massively into all of this sort of stuff. So we could become powerful, sovereign individuals on the planet and make the change, because the problem right now is there's too much confusion, there's too much fear. And it's really going to come into light now with this cardinal energy coming in with the nodes shifting. The passion, the fire, the energy, the drive is really going to kick in. And, the problem is that when people are confused, they'll make bad decisions. When people are cognitively dissonant, they'll get woken up, when it's least expected, and they'll have to deal with it. They won't be rational, they won't be in the observer mind to be able to navigate and help others and serve. There'll be a problem. We saw that, again, with a lot of behaviour in COVID, how people became incredibly, you could say, zealot, fascist. They weren't wanting to listen to people or see other people's point of view. Even some people did stuff they didn't want to do. It's like they chose to do something that they wasn't really sure about, but they got caught in peer pressure and stuff like that. And then there's obviously a whole group of people who are very reactive, very kind of like in fear, sort of like, we see a lot of this extremism, and then cult leaders coming to lead those people, you know, and we've got a lot more of that yet to come with this Pluto return in America. So for us, as sovereign, awake 5%ers, you know, as the people who really are going to make the difference, right? The people who are going to use AI at this time, because not because of fear, and not because of ignorance, not because, oh, I've got to use this because, you know, if I don't use it, I'm extinct, you know. No, actually embracing the emergence of this technology holistically and see how it can serve, i.e. make your life easier so you could do more things in your leisure time and be more creative and add more colour, add more art, add more creativity to the world. They're the people I want to be involved with in my community, you know. So we're going to make that available, and we're going to do the best that we can to accelerate this wonderful opportunity, this tipping point, this renaissance period, to create amazing art, to create amazing consciousness, great feel-good feelings, and we'll also thrive, make money, and in that collective consciousness of co-creation, in this emergence of technology, this Aquarius age, we will not become dominated by the authoritarian, the shadow side of Aquarius. No, we'll be authentic, humble, of service, and we will rise and we will thrive, and we will do it peacefully as well. And that's the beautiful thing, you see, of understanding this time. I think it's also very important, the Egyptian revolution that happened in 2010, which again, you know, people can look at that and think, oh, you know, it was just a con, it was just a setup, and in some ways it probably was. But still, the consciousness you can't ignore. Even with someone like Obama, you know, people can say all sorts of things about Obama, and maybe he was just an actor, maybe he was a puppet, maybe he wasn't really as a good person as people thought he was. However, the consciousness, you know, of a black man, you know, even if it was a con again, you know, of being in America and leading, was great, you know, for people of colour, you know, of people who thought, wow, that would never happen in our lifetime. And sadly, you know, you look at the worst case scenarios now, like World War III, when you look at Nostradamus' prophecies and stuff, that people think that's never going to happen in our lifetime. And it could easily happen. So that's why we have got to make the difference. You know, we have got to, as sovereign, as kind, as thoughtful, as grounded, that's a big one, grounded individuals on the planet. We are going to have to shine a light, and we have time now. We're ahead of time, but things are going to get more intense now that this nose has shifted. Scorpio is intense, and Taurus obviously is intense with Uranus in Taurus. However, the cardinal energy now is going to make more instant things happen. So with this Venus retrograde, which is happening on the 23rd next week, we really have to now end things that are bad for us. For example, you know, we're running out of time to make mistakes. You know, as the frequencies are increasing and it's becoming more exponential, there needs to be less dirt in the engine, if you see what I mean. There needs to be less, you got to learn from your mistakes. You know, you can't keep repeating the same mistakes, because it means that the gravity of your, you know, recklessness or negligence will become far more profound, I think. And you don't want that karma. You know, you don't have to go into fear again with this, what I'm saying here. And maybe I'm being a bit passionate, because obviously time's urgency is required in let's say, a North Node Aries sort of experience. But at the same time, it's just doing a little bit every day. You know, put it into rationality here, put it into context. Don't get frightened, you know, because that's not peaceful, is it? You know? So what I'm trying to say right now is that we are moving into more accelerated times. There's no doubt about it. We've hopefully discerned accordingly. You know, we've worked out what's in and what's out. We've maybe created plan B, you know, created opportunities for ourselves to ensure that we're safe, you know. With this Venus retrograde coming now, though, it's going to highlight a lot in terms of your environment, because the South Node in Libra is going to make that much more real. So again, if you're looking in your environment and it's nice, you know, it's pleasant, you know, if there's sun outside, you know, if you have peace, if you have community, you know, if there's things like that, then go all in on gratitude right now. You know, even if there's not as much money in the bank, or things aren't happening on time, things aren't as perfect as you'd like them to be, that's okay. You know, even if you're feeling the vibrations of intensity in the world, which might be scary, you know, relax, do the best that you can just to manage that. And if you are, let's say, not checking out or using an escapism like alcohol, drugs, whatever, but maybe relaxing and speaking to someone about it, you know, creating a little community or a meetup group so we can all talk about it, it's just going to be so much more beneficial than going into escapism, going into, let's say, Sodom and Gomorrah kind of thing. Because it's John Graham, I think. Yeah, John Graham, Beyond Mars and Venus. Now, I could have easily not listened to that, you know, if I'd been a sort of stubborn man. You know, my wife's wanting our relationship to go deeper, better, and she's telling me about this Beyond Mars and Venus, for example. So rather than resist it or be open, you know, and by being open to your partner's needs, and it can help me, you know, and that's the beauty of intimacy. You know, you can really grow together, and this Venus retrograde could make you go really deep, you know, really connected, and that would be a beautiful thing, you know, if you're in a marriage, or if you're, you know, if you've got children and you want to create a happy environment for those kids. Because if you go into the ego, if you go into resistance, if you go into separation, you know, these sorts of things could create more of that, you know, more polarity, more extreme separation. And that's not peaceful, you know. Yeah, if something is dysfunctional, it's got to end. And that could be in a job too, you know, if the stakes are getting harder and harder and it's getting more and more difficult, and, you know, you're losing more money and all these sorts of things, then you've got to maybe call it a day, you know, because if your health is being compromised, then that's everything. You know, you've really got to listen to your body now, you know. There's been a lot of opportunity, you know, to heal, to fix things, get into good alignment, you know, with this emergence. And, you know, you've got to adapt. So therefore, technology, you know, make your life easier. You know, if you'd learn AI, it might be able to help massively with systems and processes that make your life easier. I mean, people were very resistant, for example, to do online banking, weren't they, 6 years ago, whenever it was, and now everyone probably does it. People were so reluctant to buy stuff on Amazon, and in 2020, everyone does it now. So you can't escape this stuff, and yes, there's always a shadow side to all these things, you know, but there's also ways to minimise, let's say, feeling controlled, if that's what is a big problem for one. You could do VPNs, you could do this sort of stuff. And you could take money out of the bank, have a bit of cash, or, you know, buy a bit of gold, physical gold, silver, you know, if that makes you feel safe. You could take a bit of a punt, you know, and, you know, with this XRP case now being won, and the fact that that's now deemed as a non-security, even though there is an appeal, you know, they're not going to go down, they're not going to take it, you know, and just forget about it, you know, going to try come back. But really, there's no hope for them, really. You know, the old world, the control system, the inequality is going, you know. And yes, there's always a risk that, you know, it turns into an empire. You know, the American Republic turns into an empire, and, you know, Darth Vader comes out, and whatever, you know, the Emperor, and, you know, there's all these potentials. But this small rebel alliance, or the people who are conscious, the 5%ers, you know, the people who are awakened, enlightened, the people who are aware of this particular time right now and acting in the way. And it always comes down to simplicity. See, this is the great joke, you know, the Wizard of Oz, the great deception. Just like, again, when Gandhi took down the British Empire, when Jesus took down the Roman Empire, it requires that, like, honesty, you know, that feeling of understanding, you know, revealing, Libra, right? The South Node of Libra, revealing what needs to be revealed. Justice, the scales of justice, you know, and that means balance. That means balancing our polarity, you know. It means, like I say, this John Graham is a fascinating guy, you know, how men are becoming more like women, and women are becoming more like men. And you can see that testosterone, you know, how it affects women. They become less sensitive, you know, and, like, for example, men losing the testosterone, you know, all this political correctness, dampening of the fire, smoking cannabis, for example, bad food, you know, the toxins in the food, and not doing stuff to get that testosterone, like the fire, you know, in the man, for example, is very dangerous, because when you have a man who is complaining, moaning, when you have a man who is getting more estrogen, they're going to be very angry. You wouldn't think it, would you? But that's the case. That's what I've been reading about now. So you've got to be open, you know, to love, because love will save the day, you know. I came here because of love, you know. I married Eugenia, for example, if you know Eugenia. You probably all know Eugenia, right? And at the same time, the difficulty that we faced over the last 3 years has been really, really palpable, you know. And again, everyone in COVID has gone through a lot of difficulty. And again, how do you cope? You know, it's interesting, isn't it, how people are checking out, you know, South Node in Scorpio, alcohol, whatever it may be, things like that, you know, and then men end up complaining, and that's the most unattractive thing to a woman. And, you know, again, it's so funny that you could get censored or marginalised for talking like this. I mean, that's the times we're in right now, you know. The fact that I could call myself a man and be proud of it and want more testosterone, want more fire, you know, want to chop wood, as you do over here. And, you know, women, again, taking those male roles, you know, like, you know, wanting to be successful, you know, having to compete with men and all this kind of stuff, and losing that divine feminine, you know, and men losing their divine masculine, you know. What it comes down to is that men need to produce, need to fight, you know, not necessarily, it doesn't have to be violent, but they need to play, you know. That's what I think. That's why, you know, sports are obviously so important, maybe, you know, because people live vicariously, right? And then women, you know, having the space, you know, to be with other women and do that, and men to be with other men, you know. And it's just like, there's so much confusion, you know. And I remember, like, when I was at university and I would go to gay clubs, because it was a lot cooler, by the way, in those places than it was in some of the more gangster orientated places. And obviously we knew people in that scene, and, you know, it was pretty wild, you know. So if, you know, it added to the whole what's the word? I wouldn't say promiscuity, but it was pretty saucy. So obviously at one point it was like, right, I don't belong here. It's not fair on the gay people, because you know, I shouldn't really be here. Is how I felt at the time, even though a lot of people, you know, we sort of could say gay friendly and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you know, if you're looking for love, like those gay people were, I shouldn't be there. You know, I was not really meant to be there, you know. But at the same time, it was great to go to that environment, because it was just so, what's the word? It was so liberal, you know, it was so free. It was so exciting, really, because you could dress how you wanted, you could be how you wanted. And coming from a very male environment, or a very kind of, you could say, testosterone environment, it was kind of cool to sort of see another side to things. But when people hit on me, it was like, I gotta go now. You know, I'm out of here, you know. But that's just because I'm a heterosexual. So the reason why I bring that up is that for gay people, even though I'm not really someone who could be an authority on this, so it's not really right what I'm saying here, you know, really someone who is gay should come on this channel and speak now, really, not me. What I'm trying to say is that, you know, when you see confused people in an environment, you know, people who are not, I mean, again, everyone has to live their life, and to experience or experiment is totally fine. You know, everyone has got to do what they have to do to find themselves, and people do a lot of things because of trauma. You know, that's the reality of it. You know, a lot of people act out in certain ways because, you know, there's certain repressed places, right? And because they haven't got the freedom to understand that within themselves, they might have to experience what they don't want to experience what they want, for example. But all I'm saying is that someone who is, let's say, genuinely gay, for example, has no issues with all of this stuff. They just want to find love and be happy, from what I've experienced. And they're not in this confused realm, this, again, toxic realm of confusion and hurting people. And there's some people who are, like you could say, closet, who are just completely acting and have a completely deceptive life. And that also is confusing for others, because you're dealing with the realm of sociopath, psychopath, narcissist, introvert, or introvert narcissist. So I don't know why I'm saying all this. What I'm trying to say is that in order for us to become sovereign and to serve and to help, we've got to be authentic. We've got to be our authentic self. We've really got to be in love with ourselves, or self-full enough to be ourselves. Like, there's nothing wrong with a healthy dose of narcissism. It doesn't have to be to the point of, again, controlling. But there are a reason why some people stand in front of the group. Like, for example, again, that Tipping Point book, Malcolm Gladwell. There was a salesperson, and that salesperson's got to be charismatic. They've got to be the sort of person that leads people. And obviously, if it's from the right place, this time is all about ethics. If you've got a business that is ethical, that is good, that is helpful, that gives more than what you get, there's nothing wrong. That's the way to go now. But that salesperson requires charisma. You could call it narcissistic, but actually it's just a healthy dose of it. And you shouldn't be marginalised for that. There's extroverts that exist in the world, just like there's introverts who exist in the world, who are more like the maven, as it describes in that book. And then you get the connector, the person who has the charisma again, but also the understanding of what is good to bring it all together, and that's what creates the difference. It's only 5%. It's not a huge amount of people that make the difference in the world, that change things. The reason, I guess, why I'm here talking to you right now is because there is a line between the idea of sovereignty. There is a pecking order, and that integrity, again, is when people are doing it for the right reasons, where they are compelled to do something. A lot of artists, obviously are compelled to make music because it's the only way they can survive, the pain, the trauma, the difficulty, the blues that they faced. And the sad fact is that when they do that art and they get so much attention, they can't handle it, right? So the Kurt Cobains, the Amy Winehouses, of the world, and suddenly they're in the spotlight, and they can't deal with it. It's just too difficult for them, and that's where community comes in. The community that I live here is wonderful. Like, it's so supportive of people's talents. It's so non-judgmental. It really pushes people to be their authentic self without judgment, and that is such a wonderful thing. So I'm talking about a lot of stuff here because the urgency is required at this time, and this new moon in Cancer that's occurring today is really, it's about the home now. The South Node in Libra, it's happening in 5 hours. It's about who we are amongst others, our environment. And Mercury's also squaring Jupiter today. So, this Leo energy with the Venus retrograde and Jupiter, in Taurus. Again, it's a lot of this cardinal stuff as well. There's a square Mercury. Oh, Mercury's still in Virgo, is it? No, Mercury's in Leo now, yeah. So, it's the old world. Jupiter is in Taurus. Uranus is in Taurus. It's the old world. It's the emergence of the new world. And we've got to participate with this new world. You're spending time listening to this now. I really appreciate the comments as well. And we've got to be our authentic self. And, our community, we're creating Tareck, Adeeb and accessible astrology as well. And all the great people in there. You've got Jessica in there who's doing a great job when it comes to career. You've got Michelle in there. She can do EMDR. We've got people who can do that. We're going to extend all of this. We're going to get bigger. So we can help, we can heal. We can be our authentic self. We can thrive. We can use AI. We can learn soft skills. We understand that kindness is not weakness. And then we can kill them with kindness, you know. We can do amazing acts of generosity that make us feel good and give hope to others who are suffering right now. We can go into our shadow, because we can't ignore the shadow side of ourselves. You know, we've got to feel the fear and do it anyway, and go 180 degrees into something that feels uncomfortable and stretch our comfort zones. We're going to share our story with others by creating a community and find like-minded people, because there are others like us, exactly like us. And in this modern world, using AI, for example, or technology now, we can find people who are like us and make the money, you know, through tokenization and all the things that are coming over the next 3 years. I mean, like I say, this XRP is it's such a significant thing. You know, it's like the fact now that, and don't get me wrong, there's going to be lots of volatility to come, and there's going to be lots of things to fall, you know, but that talk that girl did with those 4 bankers was just incredible. You know, it didn't make logical sense. You know, these are the most powerful people of the banking system, you know, and their answers did not make sense. It kind of, you know, made it real that inflation is not going anywhere, and they're not doing the necessary things that erodes people's savings. Pensions will get eroded if that happens. So there's got to be some kind of crisis, I see it, to flip the switch, you know, to move us into this new Bretton Woods. You know, ultimately, a lot of these systems want Fed now, CBDCs. So how do we become sovereign? There's much more of us than there is of them. You know, how do we stop this inequality of wealth and the fact that there's poverty on the earth? There's people starving in certain places. How do we create pathways of trust to many countries that have been completely exploited, who are angry, who want revenge, you know? How do we create understanding and awareness to bridge that gap of hate into love, you know? How do we stop the ill of, let's say, you know, certain countries or certain corporations taking advantage of the people, you know, through profit, you know, creating ill in the world, ill will, anger, resentment? How do we bridge those gaps as this 5%, this group, the Tareck Adeeb community, the people who are sovereign, the people who have gone into their shadow, the people that understand the time that you're in, the purpose of why you are here? Know thyself. All of this we'll be covering in the mentorship, by the way. All of this is what we're going to be really focusing on. And there'll only be a limited amount of people who can do my mentorship. But we will have a community of people, different tiers, that makes it affordable to people to at least get the information or to be part of our community, so they can afford it, or even if it's maybe a free option as well, actually, which we're looking at as well. But people who are really resonating with this, who want to make the difference, who want to be a part of that community, who want to thrive, you know, make money as well, then we will all get together and we'll be the change that is required on this planet. We will shine the light, Libra, air, cardinal air. We will do the North Node in Aries, blaze a trail for others, and we will really, really be proud of what we're here to do. Yeah, great. Okay, get in touch, Amy. Amy's on this call, and she'll hopefully take note of anybody who wants to come, and we'll get all this out, hopefully sooner rather than later, whether it's September, October, but we keep getting delayed with things, but it's coming. We'll be ready for that Jupiter conjunct Uranus in April. We'll be ready for that moment, that summer of next year. 2024, 2025, we will be on that exponential wave, and we will thrive, and then we will serve, and we will have a lot of fun when we all meet up, you know. Okay, so yeah, it's not an easy week. This is a very important week to pray. You know, I really insist and encourage everyone to pray at this time and to really feel into the beauty of the earth and feel into gratitude, you know, because stakes are still high, you know, out there in the world, but we're so close. Once we get past the 23rd, I'm very confident. And then we get to it's October, the eclipses, and that's when we're in a new phase of the year, you know, a different phase, the eclipses. But if we can keep adding light releasing our trauma, trusting the process, believing, excited about the future, all of that kind of stuff. If we keep doing that, then we genuinely will make the difference on this planet. And we will be part of that. We'll have participated with it. We will know in our heart that we are sovereign individuals and we are here for a reason and we're here to do good, because that is so much more fun than doing bad. It's so much more belly laughs, when you're doing good on the planet. But it has been challenging, and there is more challenges to come over these next 3 years. But we get that momentum, we get that belief, we get that strength, that conviction to go forward. We're balancing our masculine and feminine. We are listening to our partners who love us. We are making them proud. We are here to help the elders, the people who are older, not isolating them, They've also got to listen to us, though. And that's hard, isn't it? Because you've got this different generation that are kind of, again, fixed. Pluto and Leo, they have this fixed stuff. But we're the bridge, the Pluto and Libra, and not everybody on here is a Pluto and Libra. But the point I'm making is that the millennials, fixed as well, Pluto and Scorpio, it's like attention, it's like a reaction, it's like we don't want to go into revenge, we don't want to go into hate, we don't want to go into vengefulness. So if we can correct ourselves, we can provide a bridge to help create community, respect for our elders, be guardians to the younger, develop this AI, or learn about technology so we can help others thrive, and then suddenly we're all thriving together, having a lot of fun, and then all these other people, who are not necessarily got our best interest at heart will get revealed, The more light that we shine and be authentic, these dinosaurs, these people who need to leave the planet, basically, the people who are not got the best interests, maybe, and we can forgive them because, they don't know what they do, they might not be, have any awareness, of anyone else but themselves, the elites, the bloodlines, they stick to themselves, right? But they're obviously good people there too, and they need to see the light, like, for example, in the Lord of the Rings movie, there's a really amazing scene where there's a prophecy and all the lighthouses go up, and that's the moment of like the end times, and you could say we are in end times right now with this Nostradamus stuff, if you have any understanding of that. But again, the folly of man or woman, or the folly of arrogance, fixed energies, is that they don't allow the genius, the idea of the unknown, i.e. divine intervention, to manifest. And if we're holding the space for that, there's always new forms, there's always something new, unexpected, divine, that emerges from that consciousness. And the really laughable thing, this is the last thing I'm going to say, is that it's so obvious and simple. If you can surrender to the unknown, relax into your intention, and trust the process without expectation. If you can be in your heart, if you can relax and trust that, then the universe will take care of all the details and you don't have to inundate yourself with that fear, that anxiety. Instead, you could move into excitement and choose wisely what feels good. And then you get back into the magic, the magic of what the human dimension is, the childlike innocence and joy of experiencing this human dimension. So take all that in, it's a lot to take in, and it's exciting, and that's really where we need to be right now. People who are listening to this, there's challenges ahead, but we'll be able to navigate it, and we will shine the light. And it always starts with your neighbour, your partner, your family member. They're your greatest teachers. So it always starts here and now. And even more so, it starts with yourself. So do what is required to make yourself feel better. Take time out if the stress is there and we can't find a resolution. Chill. This Mars opposing Saturn on the 20th is extreme. It's not an easy thing. Okay? We've got oppositions to Pluto as well. the sun squaring the true node. You know, this is all happening when we reach next week, when the sun ingresses into Leo, and then we have the Venus retrograde. We also have Chiron retrograde on the 23rd as well. So it's all coming into this Venus retrograde, which we're about to really get clarity on, okay? And if you want you want to work with this energy, go back to July, September of 2015. Go back to July, September of 2007. And if you're old enough, go back to July, September of 1999. That'll give you clues of what we're trying to clear here, or trying to go deeper into with this Venus retrograde. And we'll talk about it more as the weeks progress. And, you know, excuse me, I'm giving a lot of information here, which I do in my monthlies and things like that for people. But yeah, also with this node shifting, you know, go back, you know, to December 2004 to June 2006. A lot of what you were doing then will make sense to what's coming now these next 18 months. So this is all really valuable information that usually I only share with my mentees. But it's all good though, because we all need to learn, we all need to grow, we all need to thrive. And like I say, there'll be a community soon with Tareck Adeeb where I'll be able to talk to you all a bit more personally as well. All right, well, thanks ever so much for the love and the joy that I'm hearing, seeing on the here. And just remember, this is a thrilling, exciting, dynamic time to be here on Earth. The challenges have been intense, yet the runway is there. If we want to fly, if we want to do the work, if we want to really grow right now, it's time. This discernment, this bifurcation is going to get more accelerated, you know. And if you feel like you're going down fear, then you've got to make these adjustments, whether it's a healing, whether it's time out, whether it's a quick reassessment of things. Your health is what absolutely counts. Peace of mind, a path to peace. That's what we need to create. And if you're going up right now, then it's thrilling, isn't it? Like, it's so accelerated, the feeling right now. Like, dreams can come true. Anything is possible. It's exciting, right? And that's where we need to be, ideally. And if you just chill, if you're just relaxed, i.e. meek, you know, the meek will inherit the earth, then just keep doing that. Ground and send positive vibes and keep feeding us, you know what I mean? The people who are grounded at this time, you know, who are just in the now. And don't allow boredom to see it as a bad thing, you know. Try and move into contentment, because if you are in contentment and everything is normal, then you're actually really lucky right now. I mean, you're certainly not in a war-torn country, are you, experiencing hell? All right, so that's all I've got to say. You know, it's a pleasure as always. Take care. I'll be seeing you again next week. So much more's coming from me, talking meditations, mentorship, all sorts of stuff. All right, take care. Thank you for the comments.